Building your own home is a huge milestone in life. This is a story about how my marriage collapsed after achieving this dream. I am Adeline, 30 years old. My family includes my 35-year-old husband, Yuri, and our 3-year-old daughter, Sarah. We are going to build a house of our dreams. When I told this to my family, I hoped they would believe in me, that it would be smooth sailing. But that was not the case. That's how it works with other people, maybe, but not me. I have been having endless problems lately with getting the house built, and my in-laws keep getting in the way. It all started to fall apart one day when I left my daughter at my in-laws' house. Yuri and I are always working and barely have any time together during the week. We spend most of our times on the weekend touring properties and consulting with home designers. When we took our daughter with us, she would get bored and become restless, so we always left her with my parents, who lived nearby. One morning, however, they informed me that they could not take care of Sarah because my father was not feeling well and had to go to the hospital. No choice, I thought. We have to cancel our plans for the day. I thought so, but then my husband said to me, "Why don't you just ask my parents to take care of her?" I was honestly concerned that my husband and I were about to have a conflict. To be honest, I don't get along well with my in-laws. My in-laws are the kind of people who think once you're a family, they can treat you however they want. Since when did that become the norm? Besides, I didn't want to impose on them taking care of a 3-year-old child with barely any notice. But if I put off my plans for a day, then progress on the house would be delayed. After much deliberation, I decided to leave my daughter with my in-laws. As soon as I finished my errands, I bought some expensive sweets and souvenirs and headed straight for my in-laws' house. Perhaps because I came bearing gifts, my in-laws were in good spirits and accepted my gifts. We thanked them politely and left, but on the way home, I heard my daughter talking. "I'm going to buy a new house." Then she asked, "Where will Grandma and Grandpa's rooms be in the new house?" Uh-oh. "Sarah, what are you talking about? Did Grandma and Grandpa ask you where their rooms were? And what did you say?" "I don't know." My daughter looked down at the stuffed penguin she held in her arms like she didn't want to talk anymore. I told her, "Honey, Grandma and Grandpa aren't coming to live with our family." Maybe Grandma and Grandpa were wondering if we had a room that they could stay in when they came to our house. That must have been the case. She must have gotten confused. Ever since that day, my in-laws began coming to visit more often, even on weeknights and holidays if we were home. My family is currently in a small, old apartment in order to save money to buy a house. Whenever my in-laws drop by, they settle down in the dining room or on the sofa and ask to see the documents of the house that we're building. And before I can stop them, my husband happily pulls out the documents and all the plans and starts explaining them to my in-laws. "Why do you have to show them every time they ask?" He looked at me in a way that made me feel bad. But then my mother-in-law would keep asking me questions. It was like an interrogation, except it wasn't my husband enduring the crossfire of questions. It was me. My mother-in-law, like the judge shouting out at me on the stand. "This drawing shows the location of the kitchen, but it's not very convenient here. Please change it. There are not enough Japanese-style rooms, so please make more. Everyone feels at home in a Japanese-style room when they get older. Besides, One child's room is not enough if you should have another child. What on earth do you think about the declining birth rate? Well, not that last part. Of course, she didn't give a damn about the declining birth rate. She was waiting for my response. Adeline, well, based on the conversations we've already had as a couple, we've already laid down the foundation work with our contractor based on our family's needs. Please understand that it is already too late to change the layout, I replied, somewhat angrily. Then what about the furniture? What about appliances? She asked me in depth. My mother-in-law is a self-proclaimed interior designer. I have many friends, and I have visited many houses and looked at many rooms. With my discerning eye, I can easily tell which rooms are comfortable and which are furnished with good taste. This house, this room is not good at all. Luck is running away, and even work is not going well. It's a disaster. How can you call yourself a professional? You're just a fly buzzing around where you don't belong. My mother-in-law was being so nosy that I jokingly said to her, then shall we make it a 2-family house and split the cost 50-50 since you have so much input? But that infuriated her. You want me to give money to our son and daughter-in-law? You're a gold digger. A 2-family house. Ha! I've never heard such a thing. That day, my in-laws left early. Go home. Go home. You are not my parents. You are my in-laws, and I don't owe you anything. You act more like my boss than my in-laws. Later that night, after putting our daughter to bed, my husband spoke to me in an exasperated tone. My parents are trying to advise the best they can, so don't be too cold to them. I don't mean to be cold, but they interfere in every detail about our house. They always try to corner us. They think we're their puppets and make fun of us. It's normal. There are parents. You are a parent. Think of how you would feel if it were your daughter. You are a woman who doesn't always show compassion. You need to cool down and think about what you're doing. My husband turned his back on me and would not open his mouth again. Of course they're parents, your parents, but just because they're your parents doesn't make them a part of our family. It's not like we receive any financial support from them. They don't help us pay the bills, so they don't get an opinion. My husband told me to cool down, but instead of cooling down, I was so angry at his unreasonable attitude that I could hardly sleep that night. Soon after that, the house was finally completed. My family was very excited when we moved in and started living in our new house. But my husband came to me and said, my parents are moving in with us today, so there should be no problem if they occupy the larger room on the 2nd floor and we can take the smaller one. Wait a minute! What the hell are you talking about? We agreed that one of the rooms on the 2nd floor would be Sarah's. I didn't hear anything about living together. I didn't hear anything about any of this. Besides, your mother might not even like that room. She will. I've already shown them the room, so don't worry. I've already shown them, so don't worry. Your parents saw the room. When? The day before we went to see the house. Wait a minute, let me get this straight. Your parents came to see the house before we did? That's right. They said they wanted to see the house, so I lent them my key. It's okay to look at it. It doesn't hurt anything. My husband said in a tedious manner, as if the conversation was over, and returned to wiring the TV set he was in the middle of installing. It doesn't hurt anything? Oh, yes, it does, and big time, too. I didn't want to see my husband's face, so I left the kitchen unpacked and went upstairs. I closed the door and locked it. I needed to clear my head, which had become a mess of confusion and anger. I was really glad that I had left Sarah at daycare because I had to clean up so much moving stuff. I was thankful for the distraction. I was completely fed up with my husband and in-laws because of their sudden announcement that they were moving in with us. I don't want to be with them even for a second more. However, my husband and I just made a big purchase, a house. I had to stay calm and collected. Think about what you are allowed to say and what you are not allowed to say for my daughters and my future. I remained in my room thinking about what I should say and waiting for my in-laws to arrive. Just as my husband had said, they arrived in the early afternoon with a truck loaded with their belongings. They should at least welcome us. They have no common sense at all. Oh my God, you haven't even cleaned up the mess yet. You're such a waste of space. After a lot of complaining, my in-laws entered our newly built house as if it was their right to do so. I listened attentively to what was going on upstairs, and then I went out of the room and headed for the front door. I wasn't told that we were going to be living with you too. My first words of resignation were surprisingly cold. My father-in-law, perhaps annoyed by this, was quick to blame me. I told Yuri. It shouldn't be a problem, should it? But it is a problem. It was only this morning that I heard from Yuri that he invited his parents to come live with us, and I have absolutely no intention of living with the two of you, with such rude people. What? Yuri said it's fine. You think you can go against your husband even though you are his wife? Yes, I do. You think I'm a brazen wife, do you? If you don't like it, why don't you just leave? I knew it was no good. I've been thinking this for a long time, but the way of thinking is so different that I can't have a conversation with these people. As I remained silent, thinking about how to fight back, my husband flew in with a panicked look on his face. What are you doing, Adeline? Don't fight with my parents. Fighting? It's not like we are equals. I was being unilaterally abused just because I was his wife. And now my husband is blaming me again? I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Yuri, I can't live with your parents. Don't embarrass me. You are my wife, so you're supposed to obey me, your husband. I am a human being before I am your wife. Do you think that you can force me to obey you? My father-in-law, who was listening to our conversation, said, I don't want that kind of wife for you. I don't want that kind of wife in my house, he shouted loudly. Then my husband said, being my wife comes first. If you can't take care of my parents, we might as well get a divorce. I agree with my father. I understand. Then let's get a divorce, I said it, loud and clear. Here was my husband initiating a divorce, and I, his wife, was agreeing to it. I prayed that the smartphone in my pocket was recording this exchange. I continued on, inwardly praying. Since we will separate and soon be no more than strangers, then please immediately return $259,778.88 that I loaned Yuri for the construction of the house. What? My in-laws shouted in astonishment. My husband lost his color and looked at me, his face white as a sheet. I explained the situation to my in-laws, who had no idea what was going on, in a very detailed manner. There seems to be some kind of misunderstanding, but Yuri did not pay a penny for the house. This house was built with only my savings. This is because he had no savings at all, as if he had no planning skills. Since we both worked and split the bills equally between us, we agreed to save the remainder in each of our accounts. But this person was wasting money and not putting anything into savings. "Oh, come on, Adeline. You can't go there." It's all true. But when it came time to buy a house, he refused to budge. He wanted the house to be in my name. That's why I lent you the money, didn't I? I have an IOU, so you can't pretend it never happened. Oh, no. Leaving my husband and in-laws stunned, I quickly packed my suitcase and overnight bag full of my valuables, clothes, and my daughter's favorite toys. I made sure not to forget my daughter's favorite penguin under my arm. I loaded them into my own Mini Cooper and quickly started the car. I said goodbye to the new house I had known so briefly. Then I picked up my daughter from daycare and headed for my parents' house. My parents were quite surprised to see me show up out of the blue, dressed in sweatpants and carrying a large amount of luggage. "If it's too urgent or inconvenient, I can go to a business hotel," I said with reserve. Then my parents hurried to stop me before I could turn around and leave. I thought maybe they were just worried that I would be taking their granddaughter along with me. In fact, the opposite was true. They had sworn to protect me at all costs. Anyway, I told my parents about the situation. I told them that I was leaving my husband, who had not a single good thing to say about me, and that I wanted to take my daughter and raise her. They promised to cooperate with me fully. They also told me to live at home for a while. This was a very generous offer as I was working. I spent that evening compiling and documenting everything that had happened so far with my husband and in-laws. I also saved the audio data of my conversations with my husband and in-laws, which I had recorded on my phone, to my computer and external media. With these in hand, I visited several lawyers' offices, taking full advantage of my paid time and weekends. Finally, I found a lawyer whom I felt I could trust, and I sent him a formal request. I was doing so much that a week passed in the blink of an eye since that day when I ran out of my beautiful new house. When I left the office after work that day, there was someone waiting for me. It was my husband. I would like to say that he was my ex-husband, but unfortunately, until the divorce was settled, he was still my husband for all intents and purposes. I had nothing to say to my husband, but I was afraid that he would get upset and do something to me. So we went into a coffee shop together, looking for a place where we could be seen. I remembered to turn on the recording function on my phone just in case. I asked my husband as calmly as I could, "Is there something you want to talk about?" "Yes, that's it. That house, I'm going to give it to you, Adeline. I'll remove my name from the lease. Can't you just forget about the money?" "I'm sorry, I can't live in that house anymore. Your father and mother stepped into that house before us, didn't they?" "What do you care about such details?" "It does matter to me, so I can't." With that, I took a sip of coffee and took a hard look at my soon-to-be ex-husband. His hair was a mess, with a few strands sticking out. He had stubble on his chin, and his complexion was not good. He was wearing a suit, but his shirt was shabby and looked like it hadn't been ironed or dry cleaned. I didn't know how he was getting on, but he looked tired and worn out. "Please, Adeline, I can't pay back such a large sum of money so easily." "You knew it was a lot of money, didn't you? I suggested that the house could be in both of our names, even though it was my house. My house, you were the one who didn't back down." "I thought I would be more like a landlord, and I didn't know you were serious about the divorce. I thought it was just a threat. I didn't know you would take it so seriously." "I am serious. I don't care if he's just not worth it, but I can't imagine such rude parents sticking together." "Oh no." Sarah is waiting for me, so if you're done talking, I'll leave. I'll leave when you're done. I'm going to take care of Sarah. My ex-husband's words made me feel uneasy. I went back to my parents' house and asked them to be careful, not to let anybody take Sarah by force. A few days after my ex-husband's visit, I received a call that a couple who looked like my in-laws at the daycare center were trying to pick up Sarah. I left early and rushed to the daycare center. Fortunately, I had informed the daycare center in advance, so they let my in-laws wait for me in a separate room. They did not let them see Sarah. When I entered the room with my in-laws, I was suddenly yelled at. "Give me back my grandchild, you thieving cat!" "What do you mean by thieving cat? I am not a thief." "If you are not a thief, you are a fraud. If you are not a thief, you are a swindler. Otherwise, there is no way I would have had that much money at your age." No, all the money I lent to Yuri was my own. It's what I got fair and square. It's a combination of my own money, my parents, and what my grandmother gave me as a gift before she died. A gift? That's right. Every year they deposited the amount of money that would not be subject to tax into an account in my name. That total, the money from the sale of the stock certificates in my name, and my savings that I had been saving, all added up. "We can't believe it was really Adeline's money. You mean you didn't think to make a gift to our son before you died? You can do it now, can't you?" My father-in-law let out a groan and fell silent. My in-laws are showy, vain, and love luxury more than anything else. They are an ordinary working-class family, and since they do not have unearned income, they do not have a lot of savings. It is obvious that he would never have thought of making a gift during his lifetime. I am sorry, but Yuri and I are getting a divorce. I will take Sarah in and raise her myself. Please don't come to the daycare center anymore, as it will be a nuisance. After saying this, I put Sarah in the car and quickly returned to my parents' house. Despite my warnings, Yuri and his parents continued to visit several times after that. Each time I tried to talk to them as calmly as possible to turn them away, but it was not uncommon for them to grab my arm or verbally abuse me. All of this was recorded on my phone. About a month after that day, when I ran out of our new house, I sent a text through my lawyer asking for repayment of the debt and an agreement to the divorce. My ex-husband generally agreed, but he was contentious about custody. However, when I told him that if he contested it, I would charge him alimony for the divorce, he threw a little salt. He became much more calm. After all that, I have a lot of evidence. And they have no savings to pay. It took some time, but I won repayment of the money owed to me by my ex-husband and custody of Sarah, a successful divorce. It took longer than I expected for him to pay it off, though. This is because the sale of our new house did not go as smoothly as I had hoped. At first, I thought Yuri and my in-laws were going to live in the new house, the three of them, but they did not. The reason is simple. Neither my parents-in-law nor my husband could afford the $260,000 that it would cost to purchase the house. My husband had no savings, and even if he had sold his parents' old house, it would not have been enough to pay for the new house. In the end, he put that newly built house on the market for less than he had paid for it, and after several price deductions, he finally found a buyer. The difference from the purchase price and the commission on the sale were borrowed by my husband from the bank. My husband, who had lost the house and was burdened with debt, had to live with his parents in a shabby house. Furthermore, Yuri's sister, who had also divorced, returned to the family with her two sons. The sons were a junior high school student and a high school student. Perhaps it is because 6 adults are crammed into a small, shabby house that they have a reputation in the neighborhood for cursing and yelling at each other every day. The family no longer bothered us. As long as they couldn't pay us enough child support, there was no way the courts would let them see us. 4 years have passed since then, and my daughter, Sarah, is now in the 2nd grade. We now live in a rented room near my parents' house. On days when I come home late, my parents take care of my daughter, and we enjoy spending our days together with the help of my parents. I was thinking that it would be good for the two of us to continue living together, just she and I, without getting remarried, but to my surprise, there is someone I am dating. He's a 36-year-old man who has been divorced and has a 1st-grade daughter. We often see each other when I drop her off and pick her up from daycare, and we start talking. One day he confessed his feelings for me. Recently, we have all been going out on playdates together, the 4 of us with our daughters. The other day, Sarah casually said, "If we were to build a house, it would be nice if all 4 of us had our own rooms and if we could have a dog." My heart was pounding in my chest. The man who had actually proposed to me a while ago. I have my daughter to take care of, and he is waiting for my answer, but my mind is made up. I walked up to Sarah, hugged her, and said, "Yes, I do. I want to build another house. This time, I want to discuss it with the whole family and make it a house where everyone can be happy."